What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Hopefully everyone's having a great day. It's 170 degrees. Not 170, 107 in Scottsdale. It's hot. That's why we're inside in the air conditioning podcasting. But here's the plan today. Sometimes middle of the week, preseason, slows down a little bit. Not that much going on. So I said, you know what? Let's do a massive mailbag. I think I got close to 25 questions. I think what we'll do is we'll cut it into two parts of this video, and we'll have another video coming out later. But I just tried to get to as many questions. We haven't done a mailbag here since last week. So you guys know the drill. At John Middlekauff. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs. Very, very easy to get involved. Just fire into my Instagram DMs. We've put out, me and Colin did a podcast on Sunday. I did a football podcast on Monday. Did a golf podcast yesterday. So very, very easy to get involved. Just fire in those DMs. Get your questions answered here on the show. What I think we will, we'll just dive into the questions. But before we do, talk any football, I got to tell you, my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast, you want to go to one of these games? The football is right around the corner. It's, sometimes it feels like a slow burn to get to the start of training camp. And then once training camp starts, all of a sudden you look back and you're like, God, we're 2 weeks away. I mean, college football is right around the corner. The NFL is the next week after that in terms of regular season games. So any event you want to go to, any game, concerts, comedy shows. Taylor Swift, I just saw, was with the Kelsey brothers announcing her new album. I'm sure why wouldn't you do another tour if the last one is that big? So any concert you want to go to, I cannot recommend these guys enough. GameTime. So just take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download that app. Create an account and use the code JOHN. That's JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account and redeem the code JOHN. $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, let's dive in to this little thing that we call the Middlekauff Mailbag. And we will start with my main man, Luke. Big fan of the show. I'm a Chiefs fan. And Colin's final playoff predictions got my panties in a bunch because he flipped the Chargers and the Broncos to win the division based off the Slater injury and kept the Chiefs as a wild card. My question for the mailbag is specifically why the quote-unquote one-score game stat for the Chiefs is such a one-sided argument. Everyone says that there's no way they can win as many one-score games as they did last year. But what if instead of losing more one-score games, they just aren't in as many and are winning games by 2 scores instead? A lot of those games should have been blowouts. And with relatively same defense, a healthy wide receiver group, and tongue-in-cheek, a future Hall of Famer, Josh Simmons at left tackle, I don't see why KC shouldn't be able to pull away from teams that they let hang around. I also think that if you just look at the last, let's say, 20 years with good teams or teams that have had sustained success, the Patriots are obviously the best example. The Ravens would be a franchise. You could look at the Bills these last 4 or 5 years. You could look at groups like the Harbaugh Niners or the Shanahan Niners or the Packers with Rodgers. When you're a good team and you're going to average between 12 and 15 wins a season, right? Let's say even 11, right? You're going to have years where the difference between winning 12 and 14 might just be a fumble and a blocked field goal, right? That's the way the world works. But you're also, the majority of time over the aggregate, you're not playing in games where you're winning 40-10. That's not how the NFL works. This is not college football, right? If you go back and look at Ohio State over the last 5 years, or Alabama over the last 10 years, or Georgia, in college, good teams blow opponents out a lot, right? They play in 2 or 3 close games during the regular season, and then in theory, the postseason, now the playoffs, is a highly contested matchup. But regular season games for good college teams are blowout. That's not the NFL. You're going to play in a lot of one-score games. I bet if you look at the Chiefs over the last 5-6 years, they have an excellent one-score game-winning record. Why? Because they average like 13 wins a season. So most of their wins are not going to be 38-13. I actually don't think It's more with an outlier season. Like a couple years ago, the Minnesota Vikings with Kirk Cousins. I think the Giants when they went 9-8. It happens to some franchises, and that's like their one good season over the course of like 3 years. That's not the case with the Chiefs. So I'm with you. I think we probably make too big a deal with that. Like this, we have a lot of data. This is not a small sample size. It's like, well, this guy hit 10 home runs in the month of June. He's going to be the greatest home run hitter of all time. And he's like, never hits another home run. Like, this is a franchise that, like, year in, year out, since Patrick began as a starting quarterback in whatever year that was, 18, like, we got a pretty good vibe in a field. Like, this team's going to be good. Now, I think they've won this division 7 years in a row. Over the course of 10 years, there's going to be a year when you don't win the division, right? It happened to the Patriots. The Dolphins won it in, what was that, 08. Now, Tom Brady tore his ACL that year. The difference in the Chiefs situation relative to that situation in New England for 20 years, where I think they basically won the division every year, beside that one. That division kind of sucked. Now, the Patriots always made up for it because they handled everyone else. Your division's good. So, like, Denver's going to be good. The Chargers, even if it's a pretty big blow, like, they're going to be solid. And the Raiders with Pete Carroll are going to be, I mean, the Pete Carroll's last couple years with Seattle, everyone's like, it just sucked. It's like they were winning 9 games, like making the playoffs. So I think the floor is really, really high on that division as a whole. And eventually you're just going to have one of those years where if instead of winning 13 games, you end up winning 11, like the Chiefs 2 years ago, and you don't win the division, you finish second. I do think that's possible. But, like, if I wanted to argue for the Chiefs, you'd go, well, the Chargers lost their left tackle. We're better than them. It's like, okay, Bo Nix. I know everyone loves giving him the circle jerk. And listen, I'm probably guilty of that too. Like, well, see you beat us. Let's see you beat us. Can you win this division? Let's see. Because I know our guy can. Can you? Big Bucks fan. And also a big fan of the show. You have discussed Jason Light as one of the better GMs in the league, and I also have a conflicted opinion on it. On one hand, we indeed have one of the better rosters in the league, and we have been a stalwart in winning the division and going to the playoffs the last 5 years. But on the other hand, he just extended Bowles, who, despite having won the division as a coach every year of his tenure, I think we can all agree probably holding the team back. He's a defensive coach, and his defenses are subpar, and we schematically and tactically aren't clever or creative. I will give Bowles credit for bringing a sense of stability and keeping the team even keel. But doesn't Light deserve some criticism for not seeing Bowles just isn't good enough as a head coach? Ironically here, I sent Jason a text yesterday because there was an article on The Athletic. Basically, the premise was like, we don't draft assholes or D-bags. And that's a big reason over the last 5 years they have had so much success in the draft, building a roster that is just fantastic, right? And Tom Brady was the cherry on top, and then they turned it around, and then they transitioned to Baker. But Jason is easily one of the best drafting GMs in the league, and just a good guy. Like, we started talking about other mid-round draft picks. I mean, he's just an easygoing, high-level GM. I don't know the particulars of every organization, and really most organizations when it comes to these situations, but no head coach and no GM is ever extended unless the owner wants to do it. The general manager is not like the CEO of Starbucks in the sense of, in the NFL, if a head coach is extended, that's because of the owner, not the GM. Now, I'm not saying clearly Jason likes him, and like you said, Todd's had success, but that is an ownership call. So, like, do I think Jason would fire him based, like, why would you? But it's more complicated than just, if you tell me, I'm just using a hypothetical. Obviously he's going to be good, but the first round pick from Emeka Boku from Ohio State, I might have screwed up that name, but everyone thinks he's going to be good. Baker singing his praises. I'm excited to watch him. I was just texting Jason about him. They love him. Let's just say he was a bust and he sucks. Everyone would agree that's on the GM. Jason Light would say that was on me, right? All the previous busts over the years in that organization since Jason's been there in 2013 are on him. And he would be the first to tell you. To me, head coaching situations, that's the owner. I also think it's not like he's going to fire him. So I hear what you're saying, but I think it's more complicated than just the GM extended because that's not totally how it works, right? Like Howie and Sirianni, obviously Sirianni wins the Super Bowl. We all agree like Sirianni's not as good as these other guys, right? But like Sirianni gets an extension. That's not like Howie doing the extension. Like that's a Jeffrey Lurie decision. So I think when it comes to coaches and extensions or firings, not that the GM doesn't have influence, good or bad, but they aren't in control of that one. Those are expensive, even for a quote unquote like Todd Bowles is cheaper than the Tomlins and the McVays and the Andy Reeds. Still cost you probably $12, $13 million a year. It ain't cheap. You don't need to sink a 30-foot putt to score big this weekend. Just fire up the DraftKings Sportsbook app and take your shot at the green, the kind with dollar signs. Whether you're a diehard golf fan like myself or just in it for the Sunday drama, DraftKings has everything you need to make the round a little more exciting. Live bets, prop plays, and odds boosts. Here's the thing. Are you new to betting on golf? You can bet on the winner. You can bet on a guy to top 5. You can bet on a guy to top 10. My bet last week, I'm going to roll over again. I got Scotty to win, and I parlayed that with Tommy Fleetwood and Ben Griffin, 2 top 10. I think if you want to have a little action on Scotty, he was one missed putt away from being in the playoffs. We know Fleetwood's not going to win, but he's going to be in the mix. Ben Griffin is hot right now. One other guy, Cam Young. So between Cam Young, Tommy Fleetwood, and Ben Griffin, I like those guys to top 10. And I think Scotty Scheffler gets it done. So any sort of combination with those guys this week, I'm fired up on. Take your swing at winning some dough this week. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Big fan listening every day. Landscaping here in Atlanta. So you're probably pretty hot because I'm pretty sure it's muggy there. I got a football question and a golf question. I'm a big Falcons fan, and I think we have a lot of talent, but I think Terry and Raheem are objectively underwhelming. Is it possible to overcome them and succeed? How do caddies rank up from starting caddying to caddying for the pros? It's a good question on the caddies. I think a lot of times there's some element of luck caddying in quote-unquote the minor leagues with a guy who then becomes a really good player. And then once you get to the quote-unquote big leagues, you just kind of shuffle. It's almost like, how does this guy keep getting opportunities as a coordinator? It's like, well, once upon a time, someone gave him a shot as a coordinator, and then he just kind of cycles in and out. I think it's very, very difficult. Like if you gave Raheem Morris and he became the head coach of the Ravens, I think it'd be hard for them to not miss the playoffs, right? They already have the infrastructure. Their guys know how to win. They already have some built-in schemes. He could kind of be the rah-rah guy in front. But when he's the guy creating, like, we've been winning 7 games a year, it's time to make the playoffs. Like, it's pretty underwhelming, and I think it's hard to overcome that. Now, the only way they could is Raheem does not call the offense. And I don't know Zach Robinson personally, and it's hard to put it all on him. Cousins just, physically kind of fell apart last year. As the season went on, it was just objectively bad. And that to me is not all in the coaching. But if he's really good and Penix is really good, I think you could overcome an average GM and an average head coach. But that's asking, Penix would have to be like a Pro Bowl guy. Like, can he throw 38 touchdowns? I don't know. I hope so. I love Michael Penix. Question for the bag. It seems like a safe bet that Anthony Richardson will exit a game early in the season. If Daniel Jones gets his shot and is half the season Sam Darnold had last year, could you see the Colts winning a playoff game? You know what's funny is I was watching Hard Knocks last night on the couch. And if you watch the first 2 episodes, and when they do practice montage, typically Hard Knocks is based on a shitty team, right? And a lot of times they either have like a young rookie quarterback or some veteran bridge quarterback, and it's just an awful aesthetic experience just watching it. It's like, this offense stinks. Remember Jared Goff did it last year. Caleb, you could just tell it's like this is going to be weird. Watching Josh Allen play, you're like, this is as good as it gets. Just watching him sling it around. Looking back at Anthony Richardson, and if you've listened to me for a while, where I stand on drafting high and taking big swings. I never have a problem swinging for the fences. I am pro in the high in the draft, swing for the fences because there is no such thing as a high floor player. Daniel Jones was viewed as a high floor player. And for the most, relative to the 6th overall pick, he's been a disaster. But they drafted Anthony Richardson, just like the Niners drafted Trey Lance, just like in the history of the league, a lot of physical guys have been drafted. Josh Allen was one as well, and they don't work out. For every Josh Allen, there are 10, 15 absolute whiffs. And instead of hitting that grand slam, you strike out. And to me, Anthony Richardson, like Daniel Jones is starting week 1. I would be stunned sitting here after watching that situation unfold in the first preseason game of him not knowing protections and where free release or free rushers are coming from. Like, it's over. Now, it doesn't mean Daniel Jones can get hurt, play poorly, doesn't mean he won't play. But I wouldn't compare Daniel Jones to Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is a much more talented player. Daniel Jones' comp is like Alex Smith. Sam Darnold's comp is much more of like honestly, he's like a poor man's Josh Allen. He doesn't run like that, but he's got an explosive arm. And Daniel Jones is not some explosive thrower of the ball. His best season ever, I think, was like 15 touchdowns. So I guess they could, but I have a hard time seeing it work out. Like my take a couple days ago, like I'm out. I'm just out on this thing. And I think if you're a betting man right now, I think it's going to be a debacle. And I would say my gambling lock of the year, is the Texans winning that division. Big fan, fellow ball brother. My question for the pod is, which of these 3 guys had a higher peak? Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley, David Johnson, or Arian Foster? I feel like they all had particular stretches when they were dominant. I think they were all like all pro players. So I would say, was Todd Gurley the starting running back on the team that McVay took to the Super Bowl? Was David Johnson was a starting running back on a team that went to the AFC Championship? Le'Veon was starting running back. I mean, they all played in a lot of playoff games. I personally think when purely healthy, Gurley was the most talented of the group. Arian Foster was just the ideal zone running scheme guy. I mean, he was perfect for the LaFleur, Shanahan, what the Eagles do in any zone running team. He is the ideal running back. Le'Veon was good with the zone, but he was kind of a hybrid. He could do both. His style was so unique. To me, Todd was a pretty elite talent. I mean, the dude got drafted 10th overall with a torn ACL. And Arian was just certain running backs are just specific scheme fits. And to me, Arian has to play in the zone. And when he did, Gary Kubiak, Kyle Shanahan, we're going to run it right down your throat. For the mailbag, this is Carter. KU Athletics, that'd be Kansas, announced $300 million donation, which will go toward athletics only. Confirmed by a couple different KU reporters. With money like that flowing into certain universities, is there a future where random schools like us, Texas Tech, Arkansas, and ASU become national brands and household names in college football? Or do you think that's going to be impossible? I think we've seen it before. Oregon became a household name in the internet age behind Phil Knight and Nike. And they are going to even take a bigger step. And I guess they have no chance to go anywhere as long as Nike continues to back them, right? Texas Tech is trying to essentially do that same thing, which Oklahoma State did for a long time with T. Boone Pickens, of like, we're just going to buy a team. Obviously, you couldn't above board do it, but it was happening below board. To me, it's more complicated. It's easier to wrangle $25,000 in cash together to get a recruit than it is to get, hey, we want these 5 guys. It's going to cost us $2 million. On average, $400,000 a guy in real money that we pay them in direct deposits on a monthly basis. Like that's much more complicated than handing a guy a briefcase or a bag of cash. And so to elevate, you can have a really, really successful mom and pop restaurant, right? That does really well. Even smaller margins in the restaurant business, you can be very financially successful if you're one of the 10% of restaurateurs that in a city develops the number 1 restaurant. It's always packed and you make money, which is very difficult to do. it is much more difficult from a capital standpoint to run a national business, a retail store that's in like 10 different states, right? You just got more people working for it. It's just more complicated. And it takes more money. And it takes more support. Like you got to get bank loans, just a lot moving on. You got to get investors. Whereas a restaurateur, maybe you got 50 grand to put on the down payment for, and then just kind of go from there and figure it out. And again, I'm not trying to downplay, but there's a difference trying to compete with Walmart or Target than there is to like just create a restaurant in downtown. So like that's kind of the college athletics, the bounce. And I said this to Josh Pate the other day. When Alabama's AD put out a tweet asking for help, that's a problem. You know who's not doing that? Texas Tech, because they got a billionaire supporting them. Arkansas. So yes, I think we will 1,000,000% see a couple new programs over the course of the next decade, their addition to the national landscape of just being, maybe not they're going to become Ohio State overnight, but like they're just in the mix for the next 10 years in the top 15, 20 every single year. And they're going to make the playoffs a couple times. So yes, I would. I would not put ASU with Arkansas and Texas Tech. I mean, Arkansas and Texas Tech have big, big money. ASU is not remotely close on that level. I mean, last year Kenny Dillingham was begging people for donations. I have no idea if you'll see this, but if you do, message. This is for the pod. This is not for the pod, but to get your thoughts. I'll just read this out. I won't say your name. I love your show and would love to start my own podcast as a way to one day make a living. I enjoy my 9 to 5, but it's not something I'm passionate about. What I love doing is talking sports, especially football, with my buddies. I would love to start a podcast that has the vibe, guys just talking ball, with a mix of balanced takes, hot takes, fan bias, and outside perspectives. The problem is I have no actual football experience. I didn't even play high school football. But man, I love watching it, listening to it, and talking about it. I would love to make my work that. You're in the business. What do you like and what do you not like about this? I would say this. There has never been an easier time in your situation to figure out a way to get involved in the world of just talking about sports. This stuff, when I got into it, hell, a decade ago, didn't really exist. You have YouTube, you have Instagram, you have TikTok. Like, you don't need to start of just like, I have a podcast that 100,000 people listen to. Just create a TikTok account or an Instagram account or a YouTube page and just kind of start throwing your ideas out there. Record some of your podcasts, clip it up, make it a side project, and just see if you can figure out a way to kind of hone in on what works and what doesn't work. Who cares if anyone's listening? You already have a job. So just make it a side hustle. At first, most side hustles don't make any money. And then if you ever gain some traction, you can spend a little more effort and energy doing it. But like you can order equipment off Amazon. You can just get a Logitech camera and put it above your laptop and just start recording stuff and post it to the social channels and just mess around. And then just figure out like how much you actually like it. Because now you can't be down on yourself about how many people listen or interact. Like, it takes time. You know, it's like Cowher just didn't start on Fox Sports 1 with a show, a podcast company, doing all this stuff. Like, you started doing it when no one was paying attention in the 80s, right? Dan Patrick started when no one was paying attention, well before he ever got on ESPN or whoever, right? And most people aren't Pat McAfee or whatever that have a built-in, like, I played in the NFL. So you got to start from scratch and just start swinging your pick. But you get to a point, like, if you really want to try this, it's not you already have a way to make money. Start small and just see where it goes. You know, LIV this week has their individual championship. Obviously, the Ryder Cup is right around the corner. John Rahm easily could have won in Chicago. He has yet to win this year. You know, I think ultimately the Ryder Cup, we lost some when Tiger and Phil didn't play that well. Just like last time, I think in Rome, Scotty Scheffler did not play that well. If they go into this Ryder Cup, and John, I mean, it wouldn't shock me at all if he wins this week in Indianapolis. He's playing really, really well. If Rory looks good these next couple weeks, and all of a sudden the Ryder Cup is led by Rory McIlroy and John Rahm, like we're gonna need Scotty to be on his A game. Luckily he is, and then some other people to help him out because I think I think John Rahm's got a lot of momentum. And I also think just big picture for next year, I'll be a little stunned. This year for the first time in a couple years, he was right there with Scotty with 9 holes to go in the PGA Championship. I would expect him to be a major factor at Augusta come the spring. It's a course that he's very comfortable with. He's obviously won there before. He's played well there many times. It's just kind of an event. He's a historian of the game. It means a lot to him. So I think Rahm, who kind of dipped once he left originally for LIV, has kind of got his swag back. And the other thing that you see out at what I saw at LIV Chicago and Bryson going on Pat McAfee, what he's kind of become for the sport. I was telling this to Colin. I was saying this to Scott O'Neill. I think currently Bryson is the Steph Curry of golf. He's just the guy that every casual person kind of knows and everyone pays attention to. The YouTube golf changed it. Hitting long shots changed it. How good he is changed it. If you just say, I'm at a tournament and every single guy in the world that matters is at that tournament, who, if you just poll casual people, like, who do you want to see hit a shot right now? I think most of them would say Bryson. And he's another guy that's going to the Ryder Cup with Rahm that, he to me, he was playing excellent early in the season. We'll see how he is coming in the Ryder Cup. I mean, he's going to be a major factor at the Ryder Cup in terms of how many times he plays, but he brings a buzz there that is really, it's really hard to deny. I mean, he by far to me, Rahm might be their best overall player. Like I think if you just put Rahm versus Bryson and they played at 10 different courses in 10 different environments, I think I would say Rahm's probably just has more shit to his game, can just do more. But I think Bryson is the more just electric, the showman. There's the element of like, he's kind of like Phil, and I think he's kind of the modern day Phil of just shaking hands, kissing babies, kind of just at this point in time in his life, just kind of gets it. I'm 24-year-old Falcons fan. And ever since Super Bowl losses felt like a nightmare. Trusting Mariota, Desmond Ridder wasn't exactly comforting, but last year Kirk Cousins actually gave me some of the best football memories in years, like the Bucs on Thursday Night Football and the Eagles' 2-minute drive. I like Raheem. Love our recent draft. And I'm really intrigued by Zach Robinson. I agree. The staff is only in year 2, so I know it takes time to fully establish a system. Maybe it's just wishful thinking, but is it crazy to believe that Penix could have a Mahomes-type arc? Sit behind a solid vet, get a few reps, and then blow up in year 2. We got a good O-line. We have weapons. And the defense is younger and improving. What are the odds pulls us into the playoffs? If you're a playoff team, that means I would imagine, I think the Bucs are winning 10 games, so you probably have to win 11 or 12 to win the division. I guess you could make a wild card at 10. That means Penix has a good year. And if Penix has a good year, like, you're going to be in a good spot moving forward. Now, I think this is what we talked about with Anthony Richardson being compared to Josh Allen. It's like, we need the next Josh Allen. Like, no, don't think like that. Because that's never happened. It happened in basketball forever. This guy's the next Draymond Green. No, there's one Draymond Green. There's never going to be another guy that's 6'5" that can play defense like that, pass and dribble. That doesn't really happen. He's an outlier player. Josh Allen, all these physical gifts, wasn't very good in college, couldn't even get a Division I scholarship. People thought the fucking Bills were nuts for drafting him. It's like that's an outlier. Usually that guy sucks, right? And the thing with Penix is like multi-year starter, took Washington to the Natty, dominated. Like, he's a legitimate like plug-and-play player. Now, how good? I hope he's good. I enjoy watching him play, but comparing him to Mahomes, didn't Mahomes, as his first year starting, throw 50 touchdowns? Didn't he win the MVP? I think that's his style is a lot different than Penix too. Penix is a pocket quarterback. Penix is he's much closer to like a Jared Goff, like the way he wants to play. Mahomes' first year in the NFL as a full-time starter, he threw 50 touchdowns. So I would say Penix throws 30, you're in pretty good shape. I think we got to be very careful of like, this happens a lot during the draft. Like, this, who this guy reminds me of? Myles Garrett. You know who this tight end reminds? George Kittle. Like, no guy, none of these guys, like 2 of these first rounders are going to be Pro Bowlers. actually, most of the good players are going to come from the other rounds. That's how it usually works. Unless it's an outlier draft when a bunch of Pro Bowlers come from the first round, which doesn't happen as often as you think. I feel like many people, this is from, I think Xander Shoffley? Not Xander Shoffley, but I feel like many people are writing off the Lions because they're losing both coordinators. But I would argue that the addition of all the defensive players that were injured last year being back is a bigger gain than a loss of the coordinators. Hutchinson looked like the best rusher in the league to start last season, and him and 10 other guys are coming back from injury. They won 15 games last year with an injured team. Why can't they win 12 or 13 with all these players back? I totally agree. I'm just trying to beat off the main path a little bit. That's why I'm taking the Packers. Right, you guys have won the division. What, the last 2 years? Obviously, you got a lot of talent. The offense is loaded. I think defensively, if you got the Jimmies and the Joes, and you got one of the best edge rushers, you got some young players. Brian Brant's a really good player. You've drafted a bunch of DBs the last couple years. Scheme matters, but like the infrastructure you hired from within, like I bet they're pretty solid on defense if they're healthy, even with Aaron Glenn leaving. To me, offense, we all know this. Like when you lose a coordinator, especially an elite coordinator, there can be a massive drop off, even if the players are the same. I think that's where you get like Ben Johnson to Johnny Morton. Like, why hasn't Johnny Morton been a dominant offensive coordinator throughout his career? Everyone keeps telling me how great of a guy he is. I'm not coach he is. I'm sure he's a great guy. Like, I don't know. Like, Ben Johnson is, one of the best offensive coordinators we've seen recently. It's like, I got Gruden, I got Dan Campbell, I got Sean Payton. Like, I love Johnny Morton. It's like, well, why didn't you guys make him your offensive coordinator more often? How many times has Johnny Morton? So I guess what I'm saying is he's the guy that makes me nervous. So he's offensive coordinator right now. He was the pass game coordinator the last couple of years of the Broncos. He was there, obviously, in 22. Dan Campbell's talked about this, bringing him back as a senior offensive consultant. He was the Jets offensive coordinator in 2017. He was a wide receiver coach for a long time with the Niners, and then I just that to me I'd be more nervous about than the defense. They just maintain the same thing. Like, does he run the exact same verbiage and offense that Ben Johnson did? He's clearly not the same. Ben Johnson, pretty. You just watch him talk, like cerebral, smart guy. Johnny Morton's got a little more like football guy vibe. I saw you came out to Bolingbrook for the LIV Golf Tournament. How did you like Bolingbrook? Also, based off the offseason moves, do you think 9 wins for the Bears is realistic? Have a real expectations for them, but don't want to expect too much. Beside just the first hole and the 18th hole, I didn't walk the course, so it looked like a pretty cool venue. Definitely, it was sweet being in the literally in the suite, drinking beers, having some food. But I don't have a great feel for the course beside watching them hit down hole 1 and approach 18. I would say on the Bears, if you tell me they go above 500, I would say Caleb's. You feel pretty good about Caleb moving forward, and you just got some positive momentum. To me, the number one key for this team is like, do you feel good at the end of the year? And that would be impossible if you win 3, 4, 5 games. But could you win 8, 9 games and be like, we had the top 2 or 3 or 4 defense in the league. And Dennis Allen's a really good defensive coach. And the offense was pretty hit or miss. I think you would much rather choose, our defense was pretty hit or miss, but our offense was awesome with Ben Johnson and Caleb. You could argue that's the only thing that matters. Is like, you feel good, your head coach likes the quarterback, and the quarterback looks good. That to me is more important than, you're not winning the Super Bowl. Are you going to win a playoff game? Probably not either. But like, does your quarterback look good? A lot of Falcons fans for the bag. As a Falcons fan, I want to get your opinion on Raheem. He doesn't call the plays on defense, doesn't call the plays on offense. So what is his role other than being the vocal leader? Time management is clearly not one of his strong suits, which is evident from the Falcons Commanders game last year, along with clock management early in the season. In fairness to Raheem, he is no different than a lot of coaches. The Harbaugh brothers do not call the offense, do not call the defense. Pete Carroll does not call the offense, does not call the defense. Dan Campbell, not call the offense. There are a ton of quote unquote CEO head coaches in the NFL. A ton, right? For every McVay and Kyle and even, I guess, Andy and Sean Payton, most guys are not doing that. Vrabel doesn't call the offense, doesn't call the defense. Todd Bowles ain't calling the defense anymore. Or does he? That might be a bad example. But to me, it's more about like the structure of what you're looking for. And that's what the Harbaugh brothers have shined at. That's what Dan Campbell is like broke the Lions through with. Can he do that? Because just being the CEO of a company, like think about the CEO of most like successful companies. They're not like Starbucks hired the dude from Chipotle. Well, guess what? He ain't making the burritos at Chipotle. When Starbucks hires him, like he ain't pouring the coffee, right? He's not running an individual store. You are doing macro visionary things for the company. It's no different as a CEO head coach. So, like, do you know what you're doing? Because there have been a lot of CEOs that, like, God, I really like this guy. He just wasn't very good at his job. And you just have to wonder, like, is this guy actually a number two? And there are just a lot of those guys, like Robert Saleh, probably just number two. Vic Fangio, number two. And I've said this forever. If you're going to be a number two, there are a lot of industries where being the number two, there's a big paid decrease and you're not even making that much money. In the NFL, being the number two, which means being the defensive coordinator if you're Raheem, pays like $4 or $5 million. And you bear no responsibility when people get in trouble, when people get injured. No, there's so many pressures that are not on you. And I've said this forever, even about Ben Johnson, is like until you get into the firing lines and all of a sudden a defensive player gets a DUI, an offensive player that was your star snaps his leg, a head coach's wife gets sick, all this stuff going on, all that pressure is on you. That's where it's like, now we're going to learn about Dan Campbell. You know what? I know Dan Campbell can handle the pressure. I've seen it. Now, schematically, are they good enough? I mean, that to me is the question. But in terms of Dan Campbell handling guys getting injured, guys getting arrested, guys getting flagged, guys, whatever, unfazed. I have full faith, like, he can handle being a CEO. We know the Harbaughs, the Pete Carrolls, like, those guys. We saw Robert Saleh try to be a CEO. Wasn't, because you know what most CEOs need? They need a lot of experience because getting thrust in the main chair, it's where Sean McVay, obviously it was difficult, but like he got to just kind of focus on calling the offensive plays. He had Wade Phillips calling the defense, and it's like he could kind of be tunnel vision earlier in his career, which now he's able to balance both. But Raheem, like the pressure on them because they spent a bunch of money on Kirk Cousins, the leash is pretty short. It's why I think if they miss the playoffs, I think everyone's going to get fired. The owner's old. Uh, they bungled the quarterback situation that they didn't have to do. So based on paying, I mean, their backup makes $28 million. What was your takeaway from Pete Carroll's first game? I know they started the first half slow, but came back in the second half and blocked the field goal from winning. I'd be lying if I said I watched much of that game. I remember sitting on my couch watching the first couple drives, and like it was a preseason game. I didn't care. Listen. Coward, one of his first takes when he got back from vacation was Dan Campbell and the Lions were in trouble because they lost their two coordinators, and he could tell on the Hall of Fame game. Like, I disagree with making judgments based on the preseason. Most of these games, and listen, my take on Shedeur Sanders is not that based on that performance in the first preseason game that he's a future star. My take was simply like the head coach better be careful because the momentum's already against what he wants to do and on Shedeur's side. But making plays against second and third string players is what you want to do as a player, but that does not guarantee, let alone even translate always to the regular season. Because it's a completely different sport. We're not scheming up against anybody. So preseason is really just effort, energy, and what do your backups look like, right? From a talent standpoint. So judging Pete Carroll off the preseason game to me is irrelevant. Like Pete Carroll has 25 plus years of showing you what he brings to the table. I'd be very excited to go from, I think, Pete Carroll's resume is a lot longer than Vrabel, but I'll never forget and I was when I left the NFL and I went into radio, I was around Harbaugh, and they fired Jim Harbaugh and they went to Jim Tom Sula. I'm very, very confident it is the worst drop off in the history of the NFL. Jim Harbaugh to Jim Tom Sula. I don't think there'll ever be a drop off and a gap that big between two players. It'd be like going from, you know, Tom Brady to Brian Hoyer. I mean, it's just the gap couldn't be any bigger, right? And I think on the opposite end, going from Gerard Mayo to Vrabel and Antonio Pierce to Pete Carroll, that's the opposite end of like ascending up. So how good they're going to be, listen, I don't know if they're talented enough to like win 9 games, but they are going to be way better. And Pete Carroll, we know he knows what he's doing. Now, I do think there are some question marks like Chip Kelly's got a lot of friends in the media. For a grumpy old guy, he's sneaky pretty good with the media. Uh, and everyone loves him. It's like, we sure that's going to work? Like, I've seen Pete Carroll in the NFL. Or, excuse me, I've seen Chip Kelly in the NFL, and it did not work. Now, has he adapted? Has the scheme changed? It's going to be a lot different. I would say the Raiders, and this is no one's fault, but, like, they don't have great wide receivers. Now, they got Brock Bowers, who's a stud. Um, Jacoby Myers is a good player, but I wouldn't say this is exactly Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison rolling out there. So I think you're going to have limitations, especially what Pete came from in Ohio State. Or, I mean, excuse me, I get Pete and Chip mixed up. But what Chip was dealing with in Ohio State, which he had a first-round wide receiver who went to the Bucks. He has this other wide receiver would have been a top 5 pick this year. He had 2 running backs who both went in the top 35. His left tackle had a blown out knee and was drafted in the first round. I mean, the talent on Ohio State was stupid. So it's going to be a lot different. I just not really into Chip's offense in the pros when you can't stack the deck. So I think that's the biggest question mark with the Raiders. I think defensively, I think energy, effort, I think focus. Like they're going to be a serious NFL operation.